Hey, I'm Matt Manny. Thanks so much for joining me for today's devotional thought from He Still Calms Storms. Today we're looking at the most quiet place on earth. The devotional thoughts from here on out to the end of the 30th day, the next 10 devotions are going to be superlatives, if you will. We're going to talk about the most quiet place on earth today. In the next devotion, we'll talk about the safest place. We'll talk about the surest place, the sweetest place on earth, the most dangerous place on earth, the flattest place. And so we'll talk about these different aspects and how they can apply to our lives when it comes to cutting through the noise. This last section, as we mentioned, each of these devotionals for this book is split into 3 devotionals, portions, sections. And so this last section is to cut through the noise when there's so much chaos around us. So the most quiet place on earth today. If you ever longed for just a little bit of peace, around our house, we've got 4 kids, and we've got lots of noise around here. And I don't know if you can listen closely to some of these recordings. You may be able to hear airplanes flying over. I've got the window open here in my office, my studio, if you will. And we live on a flight path to the Philadelphia International Airport. So it's noise. We're not too far from the highway. We can hear highway traffic, noise all the time. It's like that line from How the Grinch Stole Christmas, noise, noise, noise. But can you imagine being in a place so quiet it almost gives you a sense of, you lose a sense of the spatial relation. The quietest place on earth is actually in Minnesota, of all places. It's what's called an Echoic Chamber. I said that right? An Echoic Chamber. A-N-E-C-H-O-I-C. You can look it up. An Echoic Chamber is a laboratory in Minnesota at Orfield Laboratories that has a sound room that is so quiet the noise level is registered at a negative decibel, negative 9.4 decibels to be exact. The longest anybody has ever stayed in the room is about 45 minutes, and if they turn out the lights on you, you get this just sense of just pressure, if you will. People have been recorded their testimony as far as saying they can hear their heart beating, they can hear their blood flowing through their veins, they can hear their lungs even, they can hear their stomach churning. NASA has used the chamber to prepare astronauts for the time and space. But the disorientation, though, that takes place the longer that you stay in there comes from a lack of orientation to our surroundings. The company founder, Steve Warfield, says, when you're in a chamber, you become the sound. The sound is our cue from moving through our surroundings. Without those cues, we lose our sense of direction. You ever lost your sense of direction because things got so noisy and so distracting? We almost have a sense of emotional, spiritual, maybe relational vertigo that we kind of get off kilter, off balance. Life takes us to extremes. We are either so busy and so distracted that we can't hear from God, or we grow so distant from God that we can't pick up on His cues, and we forget what His voice sounds like sometimes. The key is to drown out the sounds that keep us from hearing the most important sound. That's God's voice. We take our cue from our distractions, our distance, or our dependence on God. We sometimes have to slow down and cause our schedule to stall out a little bit and press pause and pump the brakes so we can hear from God once again. Have circumstances that have hurt you caused you to grow distant from God? Have you found yourself that you're just losing a sense of hearing from God? Hearing from God is not about hearing an audible voice, but about a sense or an impression of God in our convictions, in our conscience, in our thoughts, in our heart. We have impressions and impulses in our conscience to do or not do something. We can talk to ourselves and unfortunately listen to ourselves sometimes. But here's the key. Don't believe everything you think. God can speak to us through His Word. He can speak to us through other people. He can speak to us through circumstances. But primarily, God speaks to us through the Word of God that He's given to us already. And so it causes us, when we position ourselves and triangulate between the Word of God and the Spirit of God in the heart of a man or woman of God, we can begin to hear from God once again. The encouragement is this: life rushes us and distracts us, but God stills us. Our encouragement comes from today's reading of Psalm 46, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. Thanks so much for watching.